Hello YouTube, and welcome to my first ever deck breakdown video. I wanted to start with none other than Sky Striker, my personal favorite deck since getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh! At the launch of Master Duel about a year ago, and a deck I was able to climb with to Diamond 1 last month, and I think is positioned for another really strong season this meta as well. I wanted to talk about my build specifically, as well as show you guys some replays so you can see my thought process in action as well. Let me know if you have any questions down below, but we'll kind of dive into the deck now. Starting with Effect Veiler. This is a card I like to run at 1. It's something that you could potentially drop in favor of a Nibiru instead, since I really like using it to draw off of max C to stop my opponent's plays. It has saved me a couple of times being able to negate an access code talker that's been linked into with Update Jammer, so I think it's a good card, but like I mentioned, I think you could use a Nibiru instead. Maybe an Imperm, but I think Effect Veiler is better than Imperm for the style of deck that we go with. Maxi is a card that we obviously run at 3, and Ash Blossom's a card we run at 3 to stop this crusty fella. Ghost Bell is something I run at 2 personally. You could consider running it at 1 or 0, but I think it's really good at 2 for the purposes of stopping Mathmech's Trap from going off and getting them their Xyz monster. It's good in the mirror match from stopping Sky Striker plays. It's good against Runic Fountain if they don't chain block appropriately, and that's without even getting to the benefit of negating Called by the Grave or DPE and allowing our Maxi to go off. Ray we run at 3. She's the best starter we have. Rose we run at 1. I was the psychopath you played on ladder running 2 or 3 roses back before we got linkage because I always wanted to draw into a starter. But now that we've got linkage, I think 1 is fine. There is a big drawback to only running 1 in that if you draw her, you are not able to do the linkage OTK. However, that is something that you're not going to be doing very often in this build, which we'll get into later. Dark Ruler no more looking at you. But we will kind of talk about that as we go through things, but she's good at 1. Regeki at 2. This is one of the most important cards. One of the things you want to draw every opening hand if possible. We'd run it at 3 if we could. Destroying all of our opponent's monsters is the theme of this deck, so running it at 2 is a very good card. Harpy's Feather Duster, great for Runic, as well as some occasional other matchups as well. I'll mention this a few times, but Runic Floodgate is the hardest matchup that we're going to encounter with this deck, so being able to destroy all of our opponent's spells and traps is nice. Hugin is probably going to block it though, so that's why it's not the greatest thing in the world, but for its other utility and it being a spell, we'll run at 1. Rhoda, we run at 1 because it's allowed to and it gets us to another Ray. Engage, we run at 2 because it's one of the best cards in the deck, maybe one of the best cards ever printed. Sky Striker, Afterburners, we're going to run at 1 because I like the destruction effect, and the ability to destroy a spell afterwards is nice also, but it's not something I want to run into too often, so we're not going to run more than 1. Dark Ruler no more. This is the biggest kind of theme to our strategy within Regeki as well. We drop a Dark Ruler, we Regeki their board. A lot of people have asked me why I don't run Forbidden Droplets, and the answer is we simply don't have the card advantage for it. Our deck is built around giving us more card advantage and breaking our opponent's board, and we don't have the ability to, at the very start of our turn, discard 3 cards to negate a fully developed sprite board without not being able to execute our plays. If I have to pitch my Ray as my only monster so that they can't negate my droplets, then I can't risk doing that in the first place, so it just doesn't make any sense to run that card. We build card advantage with this deck very quickly, and it overwhelms our opponent. The lack of damage is not a downside to us whatsoever in the replays you'll see. We do everything we want to by still having our battle phase to attack with Hayate directly or destroy their monsters. So Dark Ruler no more really doesn't have a downside to us except for maybe 1 or 2 games where you could do the OTK. Lightning Storm. I run it at 2. I like the ability to pick between monsters or spells, but people put stuff in defense, so that's why it's not as good as Regeki. And I run, instead of a 3rd one, despite having it crafted and evenly matched right now. I'll touch on the evenly matched more later, but I run the Lightning Storms at 2 for their destructions. Triple Tactics Talent. The theme of the deck is breaking boards and then building up so much card advantage that our opponent has none. I use the draw 2 cards effect, which I know I'm going to get crucified for because that's an unpopular opinion, but the ability to draw 2 cards is very powerful. It also ensures that it's an Ash bait so that my opponent will not negate my engage, the better draw 2. Taking control of one monster is valuable, so I do that on occasion to help me break a board. Looking at my opponent's hand and choosing a card I've done once, so that's not something I typically do since I'm building so much card advantage and Sprite's theme is laying all their good cards out on the board, maybe having 1 or 2 cards in hand, and I'm going to have so many negates at the end of my turn by drawing 2 extra cards that stealing one of your cards does not make up for that in my opinion. Area 0, I run it at 1. In the past I was not an Area 0 fan, but the ability to excavate is mediocre in my opinion in this deck. It just is something there. You're kind of going 1 for 1 on cards, so it's not adding value. But the ability to pop this and the synergy it has with modules is what has me running it, because I'm able to now pop Area 0 and then ultimately summon a Ray off of that to kind of start my plays. So I think it's good for that ability. Modules is something that I run at 1 with the purpose of searching it almost every time off of engage. What I'll do very consistently with my end board, go into my Shizuku, or use my engage, get my multi-roll, use that in the end phase to do the Shizuku shuffle, end on an end board that contains modules, the Shark Cannon, a Widow Anchor, as well as Shizuku. And it's a pretty strong board with the hand traps I also have in hand and whatever else I'm able to draw throughout my turn. 2 called by, we don't like Max C going off, and it has value in other utility as well, against Sprite Elf specifically as a big target. Hornet Drones lets us summon a token to the field, which acts as a ray if we don't draw into her or helps us with link climbing. Widow Anchor, again, really important card to the deck. Negating the effect is cool, but stealing the monster, linking into it to Zeke, and then banishing another monster is allowing me to destroy 2 opponents' monsters, basically. So it's a really important card to the deck. We run it at 3, of course. Shark Cannon is actually one that I have considered very strongly increasing to 2 in the deck. The ability to summon back something like a Barone, a DPE, or any of your opponent's graveyard monsters is nice as well, just even being able to banish something consistently, so I think it's a good card. It's just not a starter or something you want to see usually to start your turn. It's something you'd rather maybe use as a combo piece, which is why I'm not running more. And Linkage, we run at 3 for the consistency factor as well as the OTK. It's a free spell in Graveyard as well. It's just a really good card overall for the importance of the deck. Evenly Matched. I mentioned I run this as kind of a pseudo third Lightning Storm. That is because Evenly Matched banishes, so Hugin cannot stop it, so it's better protection for Runic. But I don't like sacrificing my battle phase, even though I can't do damage in it. And that's just simply because of the fact that I like to be able to dump things with Hayate to help build up card advantage quicker, so that's why I don't really run more Evenly Matched, and this is the biggest card in the main deck I would consider dropping. Alright, now let's take a look at the extra deck, starting with Kagari. We run her at 2 because she is limited to 2. We would gladly run her at 3 if we could. She's our most important extra deck monster. Shizuku, very good as well. We'll run her at 3, no doubt, as well as Hayate at 3, must be in this deck. Kaina, something I run at 1, but honestly could consider bumping up to 2. I think Kaina's ability to negate no opponent's monsters attacking you on their 3rd turn can be very important if you did not out-resource them appropriately, but it's not always something that's going to come up, so there are some games where you wish you had 2 Kainas, and there's some games where you will go 4 or 5 in a row without ever playing her. Nightmare Phoenix, is something I put in the deck because of my weakness to Runic, and as soon as I started using it, I never ran into Runic again. This was before the ban list, even during last season's climb, and I just never ran into it after I put her in, so it didn't end up coming up a single time as I made the climb. It's something I dropped because I had 2 Zekes, so I might go back to that. I might leave the Phoenix, we'll see. Zeke, I run at 1, but like I just mentioned, could go back to running at 2. I think it's a really good card. It allows me to banish an opponent's monster as soon as she's summoned, so really good for allowing me to break boards, which again, we're going to keep saying is the theme of this deck until you see it in action, and the ability to destroy something that's maybe in my main monster zone so I can ensure I can do my plays is important as well. The Charmers. I'm going to start with Lina, my pain one. Every time I feel like I have a light one, I never play light decks. If I have the wind one, I never play wind decks, so I never can win with whatever Charmer I use here, so I've rarely summoned her. Dark, however, is very good. I've summoned him with DPE and being able to pull a DPE out of the graveyard for using its effect. I think the Dark one is valuable, but you could definitely flex Lina, and Nightmare Phoenix is the 2 biggest flex in the extra deck. Nightmare Unicorn. I run this card because I like the shuffle ability and it's important to have a Link 3 to go into Access Code Talker with, but it is not the most important card in the world. We rarely go into Access Code Talker because we're really not beating our opponents with damage. We are beating them through card advantage. And lastly, Access Code Talker. Like I mentioned, we don't go into them very often, but having a monster that can get to 5300 is important for the deck, and the ability to beat over some certain things, the ability to have a bunch of links in our graveyard of different types and just start popping things is also valuable. So Access Code Talker is a very good card to run. Someone asked me how I link climb with them typically. It is because I will end with Shizuku, and then if my opponent passed back to me on turn 4, I usually will never summon Access Code turn 2. On turn 4, I will then have my Shizuku. I can then summon into Ray, for example. I can go into the Dark Charmer. I can activate the token with Hornet Drones. That gets me 3. And then I can activate Dark to get a 4. I can go into Unicorn, and then I can go into Access Code Talker from there. I can even steal monsters along the way with Widow Anchor, or revive things with Shark Cannon. So you've got flexibility on how you want to climb up with this deck. And that's another way Effect Veiler is a little better than Imperm is for link climbing purposes. Again, if you have any questions, let me know down below on the build, but now we'll kind of dive into some of the replays so you can see it in action. To show you some replays straight out of my most recent games with the new season kicking off. I'm going to show you some replays from last season's climb as well, but wanted to show you this fresh game as well. It is against a Sprite player, so it is a pretty common matchup against what you'll see on ladder, and in my opinion it's one where I opened up with a pretty poor hand and was still able to do a lot of damage with the deck, so let's see how it goes. Alright. At first, you're probably thinking, wow, he opened Maxi and he says he's got a bad hand, he's a liar. My opponent has Called by the Grave. And I assume he made a mistake here, activating his own Maxi instead of targeting mine, but maybe he just wanted to get ahead of it and use it since he wasn't going to be able to use it on my turn. Maybe, I don't know. You guys know the Sprite play as well as I do, so we're going to see him combo off here, and you're going to see me do nothing because I can't do nothing except watch. So we're going to watch this go for just a little bit. It's almost over, I promise. We'll go into the IP, and then he will pass to me with the set card. Like I mentioned, I would consider this a poor hand. We've got the Dark Ruler, but no disruption. Let's see how we dive in. Start with the Dark Ruler. This is a play I've never seen before. He chained the Sprite Smashers, and that enabled him to start chaining his monsters on board, which, again, I've never seen before. So I thought that was a really smart play, and this kind of highlights how dangerous Dark Ruler No More can be and why you shouldn't chain any of your cards to it, but we can't stop our opponents from doing so. My opponent's going to summon all of his monsters and go into Underworld Goddess, which I did not think was the play. I definitely think if he had it, he should have considered trying to go into something like Appaloosa. We go into the Hayate. We're just looking to poke. We've got our 2 spells. Area 0 is our 3rd. That's always my default dump. We're going to go into the Engage, and we're going to link into Kagari. Perfect. Now we use modules. Reactivate the Engage. Double Widow Anchor. And this is what I mean by card advantage. My opponent has 2 cards and no monsters on board, and my card advantage still hasn't stopped. We're going to add back the Shark Cannon. We're going to turn Toggle on so that we can make sure we can activate this right after adding it. We'll target the Sprite, banish, then we'll do the multi-roll. We'll reset those 2. And we still have 3 spells in grave. If we activate one of these, we're going to be able to reset the Engage during our turn. So now my opponent's going to draw. He's going to have 3 cards in hand. I have 2 monster negations, a monster banish, and I have Max C from all my card advantage. I'm going to get a lot of card advantage back when I end my turn, so he just surrenders right away. As you can see, Dark Ruler No More not doing damage did not matter. Alright guys, we've got one more replay for today. It is going to be against Sprite. I tried to find some other games for us, but everything I kept running into on ladder was either Sprite or it was Runic with Floodgates, and I didn't feel like playing or showing that to you guys. I'm going to fast forward through this since it's going to be the most basic iteration of the Sprite line. The one thing you will notice, I have my Veiler. I use it here on the Sprite, knowing it's probably not going to stop anything crazy because it's just so consistent. What's nice is he does go into the second Sprite, and most people are only running 2, so I've got a pretty good chance of him not having any resources if he makes it to a round 3 or a turn 3. and based off me having Dark Ruler, he's probably going to have another turn. Like we talk about, basic Sprite on board, he's got the IP Masquerena, and he's got the Sprite Elf so that he can do some damage on my turn as well, but none of that's going to matter because I have Dark Ruler no more. I want to highlight I do have the triple tactic talents in hand, so for those of you that think they may counteract, this is a basic game of where they still come in handy and work well. We're going to crash into the Elf, and then we're going to go into the IP Masquerena as well. That way he doesn't have any follow-up for next turn, and we're just breaking that board down. We go into the Engage, which unfortunately does get Ash, but actually it ends up maybe being fortunate for us, because now Triple Tactic Talents is live. I'm going to be able to go ahead and draw 2 off of that effect. Again, that's the biggest thing I'm a fan of. I'm not too worried about the cards he has on field, although I could have taken control of something and linked into Zeke. I am going to use this as an opportunity now to go into Kagari so that I can add back the Engage until I get impermed. So no, that is not going to happen unless I make the right play and use linkage to link off my Kagari so that the imperm does not go through. And I'm going to highlight me making the right play here because in a second you will see I make a misplay. We activate the Engage so that we can go in and grab the multi-roll, and we're going to use the multi-roll here so that we can get back our cards. I do make an idiot play and activate the Widow Anchor, despite the fact that I used Dark Ruler no more this turn, so his monsters were negated. Now I'm not going to be able to get my Engage or my Shark Cannon and be able to reset it, so that was just all around a terrible play by me. It could have very much cost me this game, but like I mentioned, we're pretty ahead on resources, except for the fact I get Ghost Ogre. So now me and my opponent are in pretty similar spots. I've got 2 cards on board, and he's going to draw his card for turn, and he needs something to start his board and his combo off, and he doesn't get it, and he surrenders. And this is what I mean with this board game, is this meta, everyone's just going to be throwing stuff on the board, and if you play your negations right, better than I do specifically, I would have had a Widow Anchor available for that turn also, so it would have been a much better turn overall. Alright guys, I hope you found the video helpful. I will consider uploading some more videos of this season as the game progresses and we maybe find some games that are against some more diverse teams. If you appreciated, found the video helpful in any way, definitely please let me know. If you've got questions as well about the builds or feedback about any of the gameplay, I'm happy to hear that as well. Appreciate you guys checking out, and I hope you have a great day.